The courtroom was packed and tense as Judge Marcus Hill, the first black judge in his district to preside over such a high-profile corruption case, read the verdict that could topple one of the most powerful political dynasties in America. The gallery was silent but for the scribble of reporters, taking notes and the whispers of lawyers. Preparing their motions, Judge Hill's gavel struck with finality and the room erupted into chaos. But no one expected what happened next. Officer Karen Stiles, a tall, imposing female officer with a reputation for enforcing the law strictly, stormed into the courtroom, her face red with fury and her eyes fixed on Judge Hill. She shouted without warning and slammed the judge into the courtroom wall. Everyone gasped. The sound of the impact echoed through the halls of Justice, and cameras flashed, capturing every moment live across millions of screens. Nationwide chaos erupted as reporters scrambled to cover the shocking incident. Social media exploded within minutes. Clips of the assault circulated everywhere, sparking outrage. Across the country, Judge Hill struggled to regain his composure, while security tried to restrain Officer Stiles, but instead of apologizing or stepping back, Stiles smirked as though she had won some personal battle for weeks. Rumors had swirled about her involvement with powerful politicians and her frustration over Judge Hill's rulings. This attack was more than physical. It was a statement. It was a warning to anyone who dared challenge the system. Judge Hill, bruised but determined, returned to his chambers and made a silent vow he would make things right. But the path ahead was dangerous. He began digging into Stiles's past and found a web of corruption hidden beneath her badge. Her rise had been fueled by bribes, threats, and silenced witnesses. He knew exposing her would require cunning strategy and patience. He also discovered that Stiles had underestimated the judge and underestimated the power of a man with nothing to lose. Judge Hill reached out to allies he trusted in law enforcement and politics and began assembling a plan to take down Stiles legally, but with consequences she would never forget. The city was already buzzing with outrage, and calls for justice were spreading like wildfire across social media. Millions debated whether the officer's actions were criminal assault or a justified attempt to enforce her interpretation of law. The court of public opinion was as divided as the legal system itself. Judge Hill knew he had to strike when the iron was hot, but carefully, to avoid becoming a target himself. His first step was gathering evidence, not just the video of the incident, but hidden cameras, eyewitness statements, and digital traces that Stiles had left online. Every connection, every interaction, every reckless move she had made was now a thread he could pull to unravel her empire. He also contacted journalists who had been critical of Stiles and shared documents showing her abuse of power. The story began to take shape, but one question haunted him. Could one person really take down someone so well connected without risking everything in the process? The nation watched as Judge Hill remained silent publicly but worked feverishly behind the scenes. This was no longer just about revenge. It was about sending a message that no one, no matter their power, could assault justice and walk away unscathed. The wheels of his plan began turning slowly but with precision. He orchestrated meetings under aliases. He left digital breadcrumbs that would alert Stiles that someone was watching her every move, and finally, he prepared the moment that would force her to face the consequences of her actions. This first act of retaliation would be subtle, yet powerful, enough to shake her to the core. It was time for the chess game to begin. Have you ever seen someone so confident that they didn't realize a storm was coming? Judge Marcus Hill spent the next few days meticulously studying every move Officer Karen Stiles had made since the courtroom incident. Every social media post, every digital transaction, every communication with her allies became a piece of the puzzle. He discovered that Stiles had a hidden network of contacts who were quietly intimidating witnesses and manipulating cases in her favor. If exposed, it would destroy her career and possibly land her in prison. But Hill knew he had to be careful. The moment he acted recklessly, Stiles could retaliate in ways he could not control. He decided to start small, a warning that would shake her confidence and make her realize she was being watched first. He leaked minor but credible evidence of her misconduct to a reporter he trusted. The journalist's article was subtle, enough to avoid outright defamation, but alarming enough to get the attention of Internal Affairs within hours. Stiles was furious. She stormed into precinct meetings, barking orders and threatening anyone who might have leaked information. But Hill was patient. He had planted the seeds, and now he let the paranoia grow. He then escalated the plan by reaching out to witnesses who had previously been too afraid to speak. The judge offered them protection and ensured their statements would be confidential. He meticulously recorded every piece of testimony and verified its authenticity. The next step required technology. Hill hired cyber experts to trace Stiles' digital footprint. They uncovered encrypted messages, deleted files, and financial irregularities that painted a clear picture of corruption. With each revelation, Hill grew more confident, and the net around Stiles tightened. She began to notice that people she trusted were suddenly distant or hesitant to follow her orders. Rumors began to circulate within law enforcement circles about an investigation into her conduct. She had no idea who was behind it, but sensed that the walls were closing in Stiles's. Arrogance had blinded her to the possibility that someone could fight back so strategically. Hill, meanwhile, was careful not to show any signs of public vendetta. He continued his courtroom duties, maintaining a calm demeanor. While orchestrating this invisible siege, the psychological pressure was as much a weapon as the legal evidence. He started planning the public exposure carefully, knowing the media frenzy could be devastating. He also coordinated with political figures who had been wronged by Stiles's manipulations. They were eager to see justice served and provided support. Without needing to be publicly involved, the tension reached a peak when Stiles received an anonymous tip hinting that her private communications had been compromised. She panicked and began making mistakes, sending messages she thought were private but were already being documented. Hill watched and noted every slip. Every error she made brought him closer to the ultimate goal. Then came a critical moment. Hill arranged a public scenario where Stiles would be caught in an ethical trap. Without realizing it, a local fundraiser she was attending became the stage. His team carefully orchestrated the setting to reveal a small but undeniable act of misconduct captured on live video. Stiles tried to deflect and maintain composure, but the damage was done. The footage went viral. Within minutes, the same officer who had slammed him was now facing scrutiny under the unrelenting gaze of the public and the press. Hill realized the power of the exposure was immense. It was not only personal revenge, but a message to the entire system about accountability. But even as the momentum grew, Hill knew the biggest challenge lay ahead. Could he bring down a woman so ruthless without risking the lives of those helping him? If someone wronged you publicly, would you fight back or stay silent? The tension in Officer Karen Stiles' world had reached a breaking point. She could feel the pressure from all sides, but had no idea who was orchestrating the storm. She continued to lash out at colleagues and subordinates, her temper growing, more volatile by the day. Meanwhile, Judge Marcus Hill remained calm and collected behind the scenes. His strategy was no longer just about exposing her misdeeds, but forcing her into a corner where she could not escape accountability. Every step he took was calculated and precise. Hill decided it was time to escalate the situation further. The next move required a carefully staged confrontation that would catch Stiles off guard. He arranged a public seminar on law enforcement ethics and invited officials from across the state. The seminar was the perfect trap because it would place Stiles in the spotlight in front of influential leaders, reporters, and colleagues. Hill ensured that evidence of her misconduct, meticulously documented over the past weeks, was ready to be revealed in a way that could not be dismissed. Stiles arrived at the seminar full of confidence. She believed her position and network of allies made her untouchable. But as Hill approached the podium to introduce the keynote topic, he didn't just speak about ethics and justice. Instead, he revealed the layers of corruption, intimidation, and abuse of power that Stiles had orchestrated. The room fell silent as Hill presented the timeline, the messages, and the testimonies. There was no room for denial. No excuse could save her now. Stiles's face paled as each piece of evidence landed like a hammer. Blow by blow, Hill exposed the truth to a room full of witnesses who had previously feared her influence. Cameras captured her stunned expression, and the murmur of reporters went viral instantly. Across social media, the clips were trending and news channels broadcasted her unraveling live. The officer who had once publicly assaulted a respected black judge now faced scrutiny from every corner of society. But Hill didn't stop there. He had one final strategic move that would seal her fate completely. Anticipating her desperation, he baited her into a private meeting under the guise of negotiation. Stiles arrived expecting to regain some control, but found herself surrounded by individuals she had wronged who were ready to testify against her. Hill presented her with two options: resign quietly and face limited consequences, or fight the charges and watch the full extent of her corruption become public. Hill watched. As panic overtook her arrogance, she realized the walls were closing in and her once invincible network had turned against her. Every ally she counted on had been carefully convinced to step back or cooperate with evidence in hand. The psychological collapse was rapid. She tried to threaten, manipulate, and bargain, but Hill had anticipated every tactic. Every word she uttered was recorded, catalogued, and stored to further solidify the case against her. This was not just about revenge now. It was about accountability, justice, and ensuring no one could repeat such audacious abuse of power again. Judge Hill knew that this would be a defining moment, not just for Stiles, but for the entire justice system. The fallout would resonate nationally and send a message to anyone who thought they were above the law. But in that critical moment, Hill paused and looked at her cold, calculating eyes and asked himself, could someone so ruthless ever truly learn a lesson? Or was this only the beginning of a lifelong vendetta? The courtroom, the media, and the public had all been watching Karen Stiles unravel for weeks, but nothing could have prepared them for the final act of Judge Marcus Hill's carefully orchestrated plan. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, and every hidden document had been compiled into a presentation so thorough that there was no room for doubt or dismissal. On the day of the final hearing, the atmosphere was electric. The room was packed with journalists, lawyers, law enforcement officials, and citizens who had been following the story closely. Stiles entered, with her usual arrogance, but the subtle tremor in her hands betrayed her unease. She tried to maintain composure, but the tension in the air was palpable. Hill entered moments later, calm and focused. His presence alone commanded attention. He began presenting the evidence, piece by piece: the financial misconduct, the threats to witnesses, the abuse of power, and the attempts to manipulate legal outcomes were all laid bare. The room reacted audibly as the details emerged. Some gasped, others whispered in disbelief. But the moment that truly broke the audience and Stiles herself came when Hill revealed video footage from the courtroom incident showing her assault on him from multiple angles. The footage was undeniable, leaving no room for denial or manipulation. Her network of allies had been dismantled carefully beforehand, and even her most loyal colleagues avoided eye contact with her. The full weight of her actions crashed down all at once. Hill then revealed the legal moves he had quietly filed over the weeks: civil suits, criminal charges, and evidence-sharing agreements that ensured no judge or jury could ignore the case. Stiles' reputation, influence, and career collapsed in real time. The media erupted, and the story spread across every platform within hours. Hashtags condemning her actions were trending nationally. Public opinion was unanimous. The officer who had attacked a black judge and abused her power was finally facing consequences. Hill had anticipated this outcome and had prepared a final, though strategic move to cement the victory. He approached the bench and delivered a short, firm statement that would be quoted across news channels. Justice is not about power. It is about accountability. Stiles had no choice but to resign immediately and cooperate fully with ongoing investigations. Her carefully constructed world of control and intimidation had crumbled in hours. The impact was not just personal revenge for Hill, but a broader message to the entire nation about the importance of integrity in law enforcement and the legal system. Yet even as the cameras flashed and reporters scrambled, Hill remained composed. He had achieved the revenge he had meticulously planned, but also sparked a national conversation about justice, equality, and courage. The ripple effects were immediate and profound. Officers, judges, and citizens alike were inspired by his relentless pursuit of justice, and for Hill, the personal victory was tempered by reflection. He realized that while revenge had been sweet, the true triumph lay in exposing corruption and empowering those who had been silenced for too long. Styles' fall became a case study in how arrogance, abuse of power, and blind confidence could be dismantled by careful strategy, patience, and unwavering resolve. Millions who had watched the saga unfold debated in forums, classrooms, and offices about ethics, justice, and accountability. Hill quietly returned to his chambers that evening, knowing that the world had changed forever. His plan had worked flawlessly, and the officer who had once slammed him on live TV would never forget the consequences of her actions. And as he looked out the window at a city buzzing with discussion, one thought lingered. Could one person's courage truly inspire an entire nation to demand justice? If you had the power to expose someone abusing their position, would you do it or stay silent?